Hey everybody, I hope y'all are having a great Monday. My Monday has been really, really good. I cannot complain, okay? But listen, over the weekend, I was online trying to get some updates on Diddy's appeal, right? So I saw several news outlets as well as content creators discussing the actual videos that Diddy and his girlfriends were filming at these so-called freak-offs, right? And everybody and their mama has something to say about those videos. But I'll tell you this. Diddy's attorney says it was nothing more than just amateur porn, right? Pretty much like OnlyFans, okay? And he said they use role playing, they use costumes, they had special lighting, everything was totally choreographed, which means that it was protected under the First Amendment. Listen to this.
The freak-offs that were really the core of the prosecution's case. The freak-offs, the defense says, they were constitutionally protected because this was, in effect, amateur porn. And pornography is protected by the First Amendment. Now, that may sound crazy. I'm going to read you, this is one little paragraph from the defense brief, and I think this explains it. Freak-offs and hotel nights were highly choreographed sexual performances involving the use of costumes, role play, and staged lighting, which were filmed so Combs and his girlfriends could watch this amateur pornography later. Pornography production and viewing of this sort is protected by the First Amendment and thus cannot constitutionally be prosecuted. And I started thinking about this, Mark, and I just thought to myself, how different is this, in terms of the Mann Act, what Diddy did, from two OnlyFans creators, one of whom lives in New York and another who lives in Miami. And the guy in New York tells the girl in Miami, fly up here for the weekend and we'll do a collab, because that happens all the time. And they do a collab. And in that case, they're probably going to try to make money. But still, it's the same elements that they're doing porn and one is crossing state lines. But no one has ever batted an eye on OnlyFans that this is being done. And I'm not sure what the distinction is between OnlyFans and what Diddy did.
So Diddy's former attorney, his name is Mark Garricos, he agrees. He said the whole freak-off session was totally choreographed. Listen to this, y'all, as he describes what the actual scenes looked like. I guess, his wife was on the case, so I'm pretty sure she gave him detail by detail of what she saw on those videos. So listen to this.
Number one, that there was lighting, that this was staged, that the hotel rooms had a certain kind of an atmosphere and things that were done each time so that they could film it, that they, in these so-called freak-offs, you would see either Puff going and adjusting the camera, or you would see one of the participants adjusting the camera. And those were for a reason, because it was to some degree staged as memorabilia. Number two, the number of these tapes. Do you remember before this trial, everybody was talking about, they thought this was Epstein. They're going to do the search. There's a vault of tapes, of sex tapes. Diddy was doing blackmail. Well, none of that was true. Guess where they found the tapes? Number one, they had safe. Cassie. Cassie had them and Jane had them. And so that's who had the tapes. Why did they have the tapes? Because they were going to blackmail Diddy? No, I don't think so. I think a reasonable explanation is they might have been using the tapes for their own personal purposes. And then to your argument, if that's the case, how is this not more harmless and constitutionally protected because you're not putting it out on the internets, onto a YouTube, onto a OnlyFans, onto a Pornhub, onto whatever platform? If that is legal, how is this illegal when you know for a fact people are traveling not just state to state, but international?
Okay, adjusting the lights and all of that. It sounds like it was role playing to me. So listen, Now, Sheree Hayes, who's also known as the Punisher, he's an exotic dancer who was hired by Diddy to participate in these freak offs. And he says the interactions with Diddy and Cassie was totally choreographed. He never saw any signs of distress from Cassie and never felt like a victim. Listen to this.
Your thoughts on that? Was it amateur pornography?
Well, when I look back to it, it was a very choreographed, kind of streamlined scenario. And there was a lot of focus on the lighting, body positions. And I think I was not aware that I was filmed. I found that after the fact. But I can see where it was definitely something that was set up to be kind of captured in a certain way. So it might be some credence to that.
When you hear the way it's described today, when you hear the way it was described at trial, do you feel like a victim? Do you feel like this was a crime?
So I don't. In terms of my interactions, with all the details coming out, it almost sounds embarrassing to say, but it was something as a guy and interacting with this beautiful woman for thousands of dollars. It was something I was like almost proud of in terms of like bragging rights with the buddies. It was really shocking to me when all of the allegations came out and it became such a bigger thing. But I cannot look back and say any of my interactions because nothing felt uncomfortable in regards to her energy, the energy that I received in interacting that made me feel like anything that if there was no allegations, it would be something I wouldn't think twice of.
Look, I'm going to get into the law on this in a minute with Mark Garagos. But essentially, generally speaking, the way the argument broke down today is how serious is it what he was convicted of, right? I mean, the defense would say, yeah, these are crimes, but you look at other people who are convicted of it, they didn't get this kind of prison time. It's not racketeering. It's not sex trafficking. It's not an egregious kind of crime. Whereas the prosecution was saying, no, this was really bad. This happened multiple times. There were elements of violence. There were elements of drugs. You will listen to the arguments today, not even getting into the law, but just listening to it. How serious do you think it is what he ended up being convicted of? How serious do you think it is, these freak-offs, these hotel nights?
Honestly, man, I don't think it's serious at all. I think everything was overblown. My interactions, as I testified to, I didn't see any signs of distress. And then in the interim, since the trial, I've actually spoke to other guys that were involved in the actions and parts of it. And we all, nothing that I can point blank see as it being anything more than a couple having fun in a kind of kink type of way, but not anything that I could even begin to say that I saw a crime or anything that is warrants these type of charges.
So let me ask you this. If this panel says, you know what, he shouldn't have been sentenced to this, I think he should be released. Or you know what, send it back down. He gets resentenced, let's say the time served. Let's say his convictions get thrown out. Let's say Sean Diddy Combs becomes a free man before April 2028. How would you feel?
I would feel it's warranted. I mean, I was actually at the sentence hearing, and I was shocked that he was not released with time served, and even more blown away when I heard 50 months. I just, there were precedent cases thrown out there with people who were actually pimps that made millions of dollars, and in their convictions they got 25 months, 27 months. So I was really like completely confused when I saw 50 months associated with his sentence.
Sean Combs is facing litigation. You heard people testifying against him at trial. To those who say, Mr. Hayes, I disagree with you. I feel like a victim. I feel what he did was a crime. I feel like I was victimized by what he did. What would be your answer to them who say, no, I think 50 months is appropriate?
Well, what my answer to them is, I'm going to look at it strictly on the precedents and strictly on what he's convicted of. And when you talk about the Mann Act, which is transportation of prostitution, and there's no precedent where if anybody got 50 months or even half of that is the norm in extreme cases. I'm sorry, as somebody who, any of us can be in a scenario where something happens in our life and we have a court deciding our future. And precedents are there for a reason, and for a guy to get an excessive amount of time for a crime that people get much lesser penalties, it's just unfair. And I'm speaking on the fairness of it. I'm not trying to disparage anybody's experience, but precedents are there for a reason.
Well, listen, you have a
Okay, so I think that pretty much sums up what I believe to be it. To me, it sounds like amateur porn. I mean, they were role playing, they had the special lighting, they had the everything was choreographed based on positions he talked about, different positions. And I mean, they had to stop they stopped when he said stop. They started when he said started, do this, don't do that, a little bit over here to the right. Get closer to the light, put on this for this scene, I mean, it seemed like basic porn to me. So, I don't know. As of today, April the 12th, I believe today is April 12th. As of today, April 12th, we are still awaiting the decision of the appellate court. So hopefully Diddy's attorneys asked that it be expedited. So hopefully they don't make us wait 3 months on their answer. We would appreciate it because we want to move on to something else. But as long as Diddy is in the headlines, we have to cover Diddy. I mean, as long as he's in the headlines, people are going to be talking about it. So maybe now, whenever we get a decision, we can move on and talk about something else. But until then, we're going to keep on covering Diddy. Y'all have a good evening. But yeah, I think to me, it sounds like amateur porn, but we'll see what the appellate court says, okay, about that and everything else. Have a good evening, y'all. Bye.